Hello, welcome to the first video for part 2 of the legislative branch. This unit will cover chapter 6 and 7, so let's get to it. All right, our essential questions that we want to cover in this unit are what steps are taken in the bill to law process, how can the Constitution be interpreted, and in addition to creating laws, what other powers and responsibilities does Congress have? And what we want to focus on today is how the Constitution can be interpreted, and then we're also going to look at some powers of Congress. So first of all, the Constitution, we want to look at something called constitutional interpretation, okay? Now, all that means is how we interpret the Constitution. So there are two different groups, two different schools of thought on constitutional interpretation. The first is a strict constructionist. And these are people, and again, you'll want to be taking notes, strict constructionists are people that interpret the Constitution literally, like as it was written in 1787. They're reading word for word, okay? A strict constructionist would interpret the Constitution literally. A loose constructionist, on the other hand, is going to be a person who kind of reads between the lines or believes that the Constitution should be applied to modern contexts, okay? And this image down here, and I'm going to have to exit out so you guys can see this. This image, I think, is perfect for constitutional interpretation. So we'll make this bigger. Maybe. All right, so this says, this is supposed to be Samuel Alito. He's one of our Supreme Court justices. And what this political cartoon is supposed to be representing is his Senate confirmation hearings. So the senator is saying, so Judge Alito, what you're telling us is that the Constitution must be read only as the framers would have understood it in 1787. And Judge Alito says, oh, right from its inspiring opening words, Senator, we, the propertied white males of an 18th century agrarian settlement scattered along the Atlantic coast, and he goes on from there. Now, we know that that is not exactly what the Constitution says, but based on this political cartoon, I want you to think about if Samuel Alito would be considered a loose constructionist or a strict constructionist, okay? And we will discuss the correct answer to that in class. So now we want to look at some constitutional powers of Congress. And we'll get to the McCulloch v. Maryland case that I skipped over in just probably tomorrow in class. So the constitutional powers of Congress, where would we look if we were going to find that? Now, the constitutional powers can be found in Article 1 of the Constitution, and you know that from the vocabulary that you did in class. Expressed powers are those that are specifically written down in the Constitution. So if I were to look in Article 1 of the Constitution, I would literally be able to find those 18 powers that are given to Congress. Now, those 18 powers can also be called enumerated powers. And they can be called enumerated powers because they are numbered in the Constitution. That word enumerated sounds kind of like numbered. So that's where we get that term enumerated. Next, we have implied powers. And implied powers are those that aren't specifically listed in the Constitution, but that what we can assume Congress might need in order to carry out its express powers. Okay? So, an implied power might be that Congress has the authority to draft an army and a navy, or it has the authority to institute a draft. Okay? Nowhere in the Constitution does it say that Congress can draft people, but it says that Congress has the authority to have an army and a navy. So if you're going to have an army and a navy, at its core, you have to have people. So an implied power is one that gives Congress the authority to institute a draft. Now, we haven't had a draft since Vietnam, and I don't see it coming back anytime soon. But anyway, there's an example for you. And last but not least is the necessary and proper clause. And this is probably the most important clause of the Constitution if you're a member of Congress, okay? Because this clause basically gives Congress the authority to make any law that they think is necessary or proper, okay? This is kind of like the catch-all clause. So if Congress isn't sure if they have the authority to make a law, they can always say, well, the necessary and proper clause does say that we can create any law that is necessary and proper. So I think this is necessary and proper, so we should create it, by golly. And that's essentially what this does. And because of that, the necessary and proper clause is often known as the elastic clause because the elastic clause stretches the power of Congress. Okay? So with that, I will stop. If you have any questions, ask in class.